Okay, we're going to go ahead and talk about circle graphs and some of the different types of questions you might come across when looking at a circle graph. In this first one, it says the circle graph below represents a family's monthly budget. If the total monthly income is $1,800, how much money is spent on housing? So one of the key things to do here is to make sure that you see what you've got here. This is total monthly income of $1,800, and our actual question is how much money is spent on housing? Well, this being your housing. Okay? So it's saying that 30% of my total budget, $1,800, has been spent on housing. You have a couple of options here. Option A would be to figure out what 30% of 1,800 is. Well, that's just simply, remember we have to change the percent to a decimal, 0.30. The word of means times 1,800. So you could do that math, and you would come up with $540. So that would be your first option. Another option that a lot of students like to use is a proportion. Well, I know that my total monthly budget is $1,800, and it goes on the bottom because when we're setting up proportions, we do part to whole, part to whole. I'm looking for the small part that makes up housing, and that's going to be equal to 30%. Well, 30% written as a fraction is 30 over 100. Again, part of the budget to the entire budget, part of the percent to the entire percent, and then it's just a matter of cross multiplying and dividing. So there I'm going to get, 54,000 when I multiply 1,800 times 30, and that's going to equal 100 times x, which is 100x. Dividing both sides by 100, I discovered that x is equal to $540 as well. So either one of those two methods would be acceptable in a problem like this. You just have to kind of decide which one you're more comfortable with. This one seems like less work, but a lot of the students like this one because it really puts everything in a place and it gives them the direction to take after that. So you decide. Okay, another thing that you will commonly see in a story problem or in a circle graph problem, and this one's not quite asking it the way I want it to, so I'm going to change it. What they want to know is what the interior angle, we're going to look for the interior angle measure of the food sector. So what that means is I'm looking for this right here, this angle right here. Woo, that's really big, but we'll leave it like that. Okay? Again, a proportion is probably your best bet for this particular problem. And the reason a proportion is going to work out nicely is because I know that 20% is 20 over 100. Okay? So I've got my first fraction set up. That just means that I then have to figure out what my other fraction is going to be. Well, if I'm looking for an interior angle measure, I'm looking for a degrees here. Well, I know that an entire circle has 360 degrees in it. Because that's my entire total, it goes on bottom, 360 degrees. And now I'm looking for the small piece of 360 that makes up this 20% sector. So that's going to be represented by x. So at this point, we're just ready to solve a proportion. Cross multiply and divide. So 20 times 360 is going to be 7,200. And that's going to equal 100 times x, which is 100x. Divide both sides by 100. And I discovered that x is equal to 72 degrees. Remember, we were looking for degrees. Let's see if that answer makes sense. We know a 90-degree angle would be about right here. So this had to be less than 90 degrees. And it wasn't a lot less than 90 degrees. So to me, 72 degrees makes sense. Okay, let's try this again. Let's try it for, instead of the food sector, let's go with the other sector. So I want to know what the interior angle measurement is of this sector right here. I'm looking for this. Okay, this entire sector makes up 40% of the entire circle. So that's 40 over 100 because all percents can be written over 100. I already have my first fraction listed, my first ratio. And that's going to be equal to, remember we do part to whole. That's what a proportion is. Part to whole, part to whole. In this case, we're still looking for the interior measure of an entire circle. So my whole, is going to be 360 because there are 360 degrees in a circle. And I'm looking for the piece that makes up my other sector. Okay, so now we're just ready to multiply.